It was one of those regular Friday mornings, the kind where everyone in the house was rushing around like their lives depended on it. My mom had her suitcase by the door, packed and ready for a business trip. She'd been working hard on this project for weeks, and I could tell she was both excited and a little nervous to be heading out of town. "Don't forget to eat something green while I'm gone," she teased my dad, nudging his arm as he sipped his coffee. "I'll try not to survive on pizza," he replied with a chuckle, and they shared one of those smiles that always seemed to say they were on the same team. I stood in the hallway, half listening as I scrolled through my phone, already planning how I'd spend the weekend. It wasn't often that my parents were out of the house, and while I wasn't a party girl or anything, I liked the freedom of it just being me. "Be good, both of you," Mom called out as she grabbed her bag and kissed me on the cheek. "And no fighting, okay?" "Who, me?" "Never," I said, giving her an exaggerated angelic look. Dad helped her load the suitcase into the car, and a few minutes later, she was gone. It felt quieter already, but not in a bad way. Just different. By the time dinner rolled around, Dad and I were watching reruns of some old sitcom in the living room. He ordered Chinese takeout, and we sat on the couch, eating straight from the cartons. It felt easy and relaxed, like we were two roommates just hanging out. "I think I'll head to bed early," I said after a while, standing up and stretching. "Gotta catch up on some reading." "Good idea," Dad said, not taking his eyes off the TV. It was a normal enough start to the weekend. But by the next day, things weren't so normal anymore. Saturday started out uneventful. I slept in, made some toast, and spent most of the morning scrolling TikTok. Dad was out in the garage, working on his bike or doing something mechanical. I didn't really pay much attention. Around lunch, he poked his head into the living room. "Hey, kiddo, I hope you don't mind, but a couple of friends are coming over tonight." "Just a little dinner thing," he said casually. "Sure, whatever," I replied. I didn't think much of it at the time. Dad's friends weren't usually loud or annoying, and I figured I could just hang out in my room if they were. By the time evening rolled around, the smell of barbecue filled the house. Dad was in a weirdly good mood, whistling as he worked in the kitchen. He even put on one of Mom's playlists, soft jazz, which was a little unusual for him. When the doorbell rang, I wandered into the hallway out of curiosity. A couple of people stepped inside, laughing and talking as they kicked off their shoes. One was a man I vaguely recognized from Dad's gym, and the other was a woman I'd never seen before. She was tall, with long, dark hair and the kind of confident smile that made her stand out immediately. "Emma, this is Cheryl," Dad said, introducing the woman first. "And this is Greg." "Hi," I said, giving them a quick wave. Cheryl leaned down a little, her smile widening. "Your dad talks about you all the time. It's nice to finally meet you." I just nodded, feeling a little awkward. Something about her didn't sit right with me, but I brushed it off. Maybe I was just being weird about meeting new people. As they moved into the kitchen, I went back to my room. But even with the door closed, I couldn't help but hear the conversation drifting down the hall. Cheryl's laugh was loud and bubbly, and it felt like she was talking to my dad more than Greg was. Curiosity got the better of me after a while, so I ventured back out under the pretense of grabbing a snack. Standing at the edge of the kitchen, I noticed the way Cheryl leaned in when she spoke to Dad, her hand lightly brushing his arm as she laughed at something he said. Dad seemed different. Not in an obvious way, but in little things, the way he smiled at her, the extra effort he put into the meal, the way his eyes lit up when she complimented him. I suddenly felt like an outsider in my own house. When I turned to leave, Cheryl caught my eye. She smiled again, but this time it felt sharper, more calculated. "You should join us," she said warmly, but it didn't feel like an invitation. "No, I'm good," I mumbled, retreating back to my room. That's when I started putting the pieces together. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Lying in bed that night, I replayed everything in my head, the way Cheryl acted around Dad, how he seemed different when she was around, even her overly sweet tone when she talked to me. It wasn't like I'd never seen women flirt with my dad before. He was good-looking for his age, the kind of guy who turned heads when we went out for family dinners. But this felt different. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of low voices and the clatter of dishes. When I walked into the kitchen, Dad was there with Cheryl, both of them sipping coffee. Greg was nowhere to be seen. "Morning, sleepyhead," Dad said, overly cheerful. Cheryl smiled at me, her lipstick still perfect even this early in the day. "Good morning. I was just telling your dad he makes the best coffee." I muttered a half-hearted morning and grabbed some cereal, feeling like I'd walked into a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. By the time I finished eating, Cheryl was saying goodbye. She leaned in to hug Dad, holding on a little too long. He didn't pull away. I pretended not to notice, but I could feel my cheeks burning. As soon as the door closed behind her, I turned to Dad. "So, she's a friend, huh?" I said, keeping my voice casual, but my eyebrows raised. He looked at me, surprised. "Yeah, from the gym." "Why?" "No reason," I said quickly, not ready to have this conversation yet. But the uneasy feeling didn't go away. Later that day, I went out to run some errands, mostly just an excuse to get out of the house. When I got back, I saw Cheryl's car in the driveway. I froze for a second, debating whether to go inside or just drive off somewhere. Curiosity won out, and I quietly let myself in. I could hear voices in the living room, so I tiptoed closer. "Are you sure she won't find out?" Cheryl's voice. "She won't. I've got it under control," Dad replied. My stomach twisted into a knot. They weren't talking about me. They were talking about Mom. I peeked around the corner and saw Cheryl sitting way too close to Dad on the couch. She had her hand on his knee, her head tilted toward him like they were in their own little world. I backed away before they could notice me, my heart pounding in my chest. It all made sense now, the nervous energy, the extra effort with the dinner, the way Cheryl acted like she belonged here. My dad was cheating on my mom. I spent the rest of the day in my room, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to storm into the living room and demand answers. Another part of me wanted to pretend I didn't see anything. By the time Cheryl left, it was dark outside. I heard the door close and her car pull out of the driveway. A few minutes later, there was a soft knock on my door. "Hey, you good?" Dad asked, peeking in. I sat up in bed, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, fine." He stepped inside, looking at me the way he did when I was a kid, and he could tell I was upset. "You've been quiet today. Everything okay?" I stared at him for a long moment, debating how to start. "Who is she?" I finally. "Cheryl." "Who is she really?" "Because she doesn't act like just a friend." He sighed and sat down at the edge of my bed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Emma, you're overthinking things. Cheryl's just..." "Don't," I interrupted. My voice came out sharper than I expected. "Don't lie to me." He looked at me, his expression softening in a way that almost made me feel bad for him. "Almost." "It's complicated," he said quietly. "No, it's not," I shot back. "You're either cheating on Mom or you're not. Which is it?" Dad sighed again, longer this time, and dropped his head into his hands. "Emma, this isn't something you need to worry about. It's between me and your mom." "Does she know?" I asked, my chest tightening. He hesitated just a second too long. "That's what I thought," I said bitterly, standing up. "Emma, wait," he said, reaching for my arm, but I pulled away. "Do you even care what this would do to her?" "To us?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Of course I care," he said, his tone defensive now. "But things aren't always black and white. Relationships are complicated. Your mom and we've been going through some things." "Yeah, and I'm sure hooking up with Cheryl is helping a lot," I snapped. He didn't respond to that, he just sat there looking defeated. I left the room, slamming the door behind me. For the first time in my life, I didn't see him as my dad, the guy who fixed my bike, taught me how to drive, and always had my back. He was just a guy who was making choices I couldn't understand. Sunday evening rolled around, and with it came the sound of Mom's car pulling into the driveway. I was in the kitchen, pretending to do homework, but my stomach churned knowing what was coming. The door opened, and Mom walked in, looking a little tired but cheerful. "Hey, you two. I missed my favorite people," she called out, dropping her suitcase by the door. Dad came in from the living room, his smile easy and relaxed, like nothing was wrong. "Welcome back," he said, pulling her into a hug. I watched from the kitchen table, my jaw tightening. How could he act so normal? Mom walked over and kissed the top of my head. "Hi, sweetheart. How was the weekend?" "It was fine," I said, avoiding her eyes. "Good. You didn't give your dad too hard a time, did you?" she teased, ruffling my hair. "Nope. He had company," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. Dad shot me a warning look, but Mom didn't seem to notice. She was busy unpacking her work bag, chatting about the conference she'd been to. For the next hour, the house felt like it always did when we were all together. We ate dinner, laughed at one of Mom's stories, and everything seemed fine on the surface. But I couldn't shake the weight in my chest. After dinner, Mom asked me to help her unpack while Dad stayed in the living room. "So, did you two survive without me?" she asked, pulling a stack of clothes from her suitcase. I hesitated, the words bubbling up inside me. I wanted to tell her everything, about Cheryl, about the way Dad looked at her, about how he brushed me off when I confronted him. But I couldn't. Not yet. "Yeah, we were fine," I said instead, forcing a smile. She smiled back, clearly relieved. "Good. I was worried you'd gang up on me with takeout every night." I laughed weakly, but my mind was spinning. Should I tell her? Would she even believe me? What if it destroyed everything? When I went back to my room that night, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. Mom had no idea what was going on, and Dad was acting like nothing happened. But I knew. And now, I had to decide what to do about it. I avoided both of them the next morning, claiming I had a lot of schoolwork to catch up on. What if she found out from someone else? What if Cheryl slipped up and said something? Would Mom hate me for not telling her sooner? By mid-afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I found Mom in the living room, folding a pile of towels. "Hey, Mom, can we talk?" I asked, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. She looked up, immediately sensing my tone. "Of course. What's wrong?" I sat down on the couch across from her, my heart pounding. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears as I tried to figure out how to say it. "Something happened while you were gone," I began, my hands fidgeting with the hem of my shirt. Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean? Did something happen with you and your dad?" "Not exactly," I said, swallowing hard. "It's about him and Cheryl." The room felt impossibly quiet as I told her everything. I kept my voice steady, sticking to the facts: the dinner, Cheryl staying late, what I overheard, the way Dad brushed me off when I confronted him. When I finished, Mom just sat there, holding a half-folded towel in her lap. "Are you sure?" she asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sure," I said, tears pricking at my eyes. She nodded slowly, her face unreadable. "Okay. Okay?" I repeated, confused by how calm she seemed. She took a deep breath, setting the towel aside. "I mean, thank you for telling me. I need some time to process this." I nodded, unsure what else to say. The rest of the day felt surreal. Mom didn't cry or yell. She didn't even confront Dad when he got home. Instead, she acted completely normal, like nothing had changed. That night, I heard muffled voices coming from their bedroom. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded tense. The next morning, Mom sat me down in the kitchen before school. "Emma," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I'm going to handle this, but I don't want you worrying about it. This is between me and your dad." I nodded, even though I didn't fully understand what handle it meant. Over the next few weeks, things were different in the house. Mom and Dad didn't fight, but there was a distance between them that hadn't been there before. Cheryl never came back, at least not that I saw. Mom didn't bring it up again, and neither did I. But sometimes, I'd catch her staring out the window, her face unreadable, and I'd wonder if she regretted not walking away. As for me, I couldn't unsee what I'd seen or unhear what I'd heard. I couldn't look at Dad the same way anymore, no matter how much I wanted to. It wasn't the kind of ending you'd find in a movie, no big blow-up, no dramatic goodbye. Just the quiet aftermath of a truth that couldn't be ignored. And honestly, that was harder than any fight could have been.